Are we free? Can obsessions, addictions, or certain types of ignorance threaten our freedom?
Is freedom compatible with determinism?
Are the different kinds of freedom?
Are all kinds of freedom equally worthwhile?
Must we act freely in order to be responsible for our actions?
As we continue, we will attempt to enter and dig deeper into the freedom of the human person as well as its responsibilities in an effort to answer these questions and to provide reliable knowledge. Hello everyone!
Hello everyone!
Hello everyone.
Hello everyone!
Hello everyone!
Hello everyone!
Let me start with an idiomatic expression saying, finding a needle in a haystack. People nowadays scream nothing but freedom, and I bet we all want to. We all want to embrace the feeling of being like a bird freely flying above the majestic sky. Finding our own freedom in the midst of the current phenomena we're facing can be like a needle in a haystack.
But even though we're stuck in this situation, we shouldn't miss the boat to learn to step out of our comfort and have wide open eyes that are willing to accept nothing but the truth, as well as to accept responsibilities in every action.
Being aware of what freedom really is keeps everyone on the boat. Well, you won't sink and you won't taste your own medicine if you know. We are now in a society where the true definition of freedom has been rejected and a new one has been placed. A new one that changed the surroundings of everyone, causing them to commit something that isn't good unconsciously.
What is freedom for you? Let me share that freedom in philosophy states that it is the ability to make choices in a responsible manner. It is easy to define freedom, but what is not easy is the sudden action we take because we really want to taste what freedom is, because we desire for it so much. In philosophy, freedom is the power of sentiment to exercise its will. Desiring a particular outcome, people bend their thoughts and their efforts toward realizing it, towards their goal. Their capacity to work towards their goal is their freedom. The perfect expression of freedom would be found in someone who, having an unerring idea of what is good, and what a similarly unerring idea of how to realize it, that experience no impediment to pursuing it.
Undoubtedly, freedom is more than a power, but we should get blind of what is positive and negative when it comes to freedom.
A positive and negative freedom?
Yes, positive and negative freedom are the two senses of freedom. A negative freedom is a freedom which is considered as negative because you fail to use a freedom in a responsible manner. For example, instead of obeying what your mother has told you to do, you leave your house and hang out with your friends. You fail to use your freedom in a responsible way.
Most people do not really want freedom because freedom involves responsibility, and most people are frightened of responsibility. The reason why they are unconsciously making a negative choice that leads to negative consequences is because they fail to use the freedom in a responsible way.
That's right. Contrarily, positive freedom is freedom that is not the right thing to exercise. Freedom in a responsible manner. It is very opposite to negative freedom. Freedom cannot be bestowed. It must be achieved. The simplest way to achieve it is to use in a responsible way. Example of this is you obey your mother first before hanging out with your friends. It is easy to avoid negative freedom if everyone is aware that responsibility is attached to freedom.
Basically, negative freedom is simply the freedom that is not used in a responsible way, and positive freedom is the one that does the right thing and exercises freedom in a responsible way.
Brilliant. We should acknowledge the fact that freedom is one of the deepest and noblest aspirations of the human spirit.
And now that we had a glimpse of what freedom means, let us now share the kinds of freedom and how to achieve it in a responsible way.
The first one is psychological freedom, a freedom of choice where the person is free to perform action that have no outside force. It is someone's choice that she or he considers right and wise. It begins with detaching yourself from all of the emotion, ideals, definition, and standards you learned growing up. We all get stuck with negative thoughts that might have occurred to us during a whole situation. Psychological freedom is to make choices for oneself, even the ability to choose our thoughts and beliefs through gathering information from all sides of discussion. To bring you more deeper in this kind of freedom, let me share an example. Have you been in a toxic and manipulative situation? To the extent that you cannot do what you think is right to do, then you decided to step out in that situation no matter how hard it is. It is a wise decision to step out of a situation where it hinders you to be free. This one is considered as a psychological freedom, for it allows you to do the wise thing and choose to step out of that toxic and manipulative situation without force trying to stop you because it is your choice.
The second kind of freedom is physical freedom. Have you encountered this one? I bet you all have an idea what it is. Physical freedom is the ability to move around and control your own body. The person can go wherever they want. He or she is not impeded in his actions by any physical force. An example of this is simply the ability to go wherever you want to go freely, and an example of restraint in physical freedom is simply the way that you cannot go out because your parents told you not to, and you have nothing to do but obey them. Your movements are limited because someone is controlling and stopping you to go wherever you want to go.
The third one is moral freedom, using freedom in a manner that upholds human dignity and goodness. A person becomes free when he uses his freedom well, but becomes less when he or she uses in a bad way. A set of moral values and to live your life accordance with those values. An example of this moral freedom is a person choosing to live his or her life bound by an adherence to virtues such as honesty, loyalty, forgiveness, and self-discipline. Another example is when you see someone that needs help and without a second thought, you help them. Of course, it is strange if you did not help them and just leave them there.
Furthermore, Ronald Reagan once said that freedom is the right to question and change the established way of doing things. This just means that the moment an individual wakes up in the morning to the moment he lays back down to sleep in the evening, thousands, if not millions of choices have been made.
Lastly is absolute freedom. The idea of absolute freedom goes back to the French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre that describes in its core the condition of human existence. That is possible to act radically, free at any time, and no form of hindrance will prevent you from doing what you want.
Contrarily, freedom cannot be absolute. No one can be completely free. Broadly speaking, your rights, whatever they may be, define the limits to your freedom.
In a nutshell, psychological, physical, moral, and absolute freedom are kinds of freedom. We tackle one by one by the meaning and provide some example for you to fully understand what it is. To top it all up, responsibility is the price of freedom, a famous quote from Albert Hubbard.
Meanwhile, let me ask if you have fought for something. Have you represented something that is very close to your heart? Well, two of the most important people represent freedom. Why? Let us share this with you.
Born in Porbandar, India, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi studied law and organized boycotts against British institutions in peaceful forms of civil disobedience. He was killed by fanatics in 1948. Gandhi led the Salt March in protest against the government monopoly on salt production. His definition of freedom includes not only freedom from coercion and dominance, but also self-regulation through self-restraint. Similarly, nonviolence can be used in all areas of life. Gandhi led the Indians to freedom through his revolutionary concept of nonviolence.
The second person who represents freedom is Rabindranath Tagore. But how did it happen? During the 19th century, Rabindranath Tagore was a well-known personality in Bengal, India. In addition to his numerous literary pursuits, he was interested in the common people and pushed for social change. To put his Upanishadic educational principles to the test, he established an experimental school in Shantiniketan. He was also a member of the Indian Nationalist Party, and he became a significant living institution in India, notably in Bengal, and the voice of India's spiritual history to the rest of the globe. Through his non-sentimental and imaginative approach in the poem Freedom, he expresses the necessity for freedom to originate from each and every individual's heart and then be felt in pairs.
Do you also know that Tagore, the Bard of Bengal, wrote a patriotic poem called Freedom? In 1913, he became famous for being the first non-European to win a Nobel Prize in Literature, and in particular for his brilliant novel Gitanjali. He expresses his dreams and vision for his motherland India in the poetry Freedom, which is the theme of the poem Freedom. He was an outspoken supporter of India independence from Britain and wanted the British Raj to end, which is the theme of the film Freedom.
He underscores the urgency of his plea for Indian independence by alliterating the words freedom, from, and fear with the F sound. The word freedom appears several times throughout the poem to indicate the poet's strong desire for freedom from imperial oppression. He portrays his nation as an elderly woman who has broken her back and has lost her vision. India is not one of those countries. Colonial powers keep her docile, therefore, she has a bright future ahead of her. The patriotism of Tagore is evident from the first lines. The poem is about India's battle for independence. Tagore appeals to the motherland to be free of dread, persecution, and fear of strangers. Tagore struggles to preserve his beloved nation from colonial powers, and the reader feels the weight of those powers. Tagore's patriotism shines through in this poem, as he criticizes the master who uses his motherland as a puppet, in reality as a slave. The mind is free when it is free of fears.
Upon hearing and knowing how these people represented freedom, what do you think is or the best words to determine freedom? Well, in philosophy, there are two words that will help you more determine freedom. And what are they?
The first one is voluntariness. Voluntariness is a willpower or motivational power that causes us to act in accordance with our desires. Freedom is a power that can be used to determine not only voluntary actions but also non-voluntary motivations of the will. Of the will. The fact that the freedom extends to non-voluntary motivation is a necessary feature of freedom as it is commonly understood.
The second one is responsibility. Responsibility and freedom go hand in hand. You cannot have freedom if you refuse to accept responsibility. They either come together or go together. You will be held accountable for every act, every breath you take, whatever you do or not to do. You will be held accountable.
All in all, only those who are responsible can be free, whereas voluntariness is the term used to describe an action that is motivated by free will rather than an effect. Freedom is both the cause and the effect of voluntarism. Freedom is preserved through taking responsibility.
Are we free?
Can obsessions, addictions, or certain types of ignorance threaten our freedom?
Is freedom compatible with determinism?
Are the different kinds of freedom?
Are all kinds of freedom equally worthwhile?
Must we act freely in order to be responsible for our actions?
Have you finally found the answer in these questions? Did you already have a wider knowledge about freedom? Let me share with you few philosophers and their concept about freedom for you to be able to understand what freedom is in the perspective of others.
This course focuses on philosophical, political, spiritual, and economic elements of freedom. It is part of humanity's validity to be free. Freedom is obedience to self-formulated rules, said by Aristotle. Have you ever heard about him? If so, let me add, or allow us to share a reliable knowledge which will help you to understand what freedom is for Aristotle. Aristotle wishes for us to understand that our actions have consequences. Apart from will, the power of volition, which is defined as the ability to make your own choices or decisions, is an essential quality of a practical intellect's judgment. Furthermore, he believes that if there is no intellect, there is no will. The will of humanity is a tool for free will. Everyone has the ability to be good or bad, worthy or unworthy. A human being, according to Aristotle, is rational. Reason as divine quality. Humans are endowed with the divine spark. Aristotle basically states that the purpose of the human being is to be happy. Our will is a tool for free will. Choices, will decisions, and deep reflection all draw each other out.
Saint Thomas Aquinas states that love is freedom and there is spiritual freedom. Let's go first to the love freedom of Saint Thomas Aquinas. Human beings have the most powerful ability of all God's creatures to change themselves and the world around them for the better. As a result, humans have supernatural transcendental destiny. This simply means that he can transcend his ordinary being or self to become his highest being or self. This is consistent with St. Thomas' idea that in God's plan, a human being must develop and perfect himself through his daily tasks. As a result, if a human being lives a righteous and virtuous life with perseverance, he transcends his moral state of life and soars to an immoral state of life. The power of change, however, cannot be attained by human beings alone, but only through cooperation with God. There is a chasm between humanity and God that only God can bridge with His power. Love, on the other hand, is in keeping with humanity's free nature. Law commands and completes, love just beckons and welcomes. St. Thomas highlights humanity's freedom, yet chooses to manage humanity's existence via love. Since God is love, love is the guiding force for humankind's self-perception and intended destination of happiness. According to St. Thomas Aquinas, God's existence is the first cause of all God's creations, and humans have the distinctive ability to transform themselves and the world around them for the better. We are both material and spiritual beings as humans. Because of our spirituality, we have a sense of morality. God is love, and love is our ultimate goal. The highest form of happiness, according to St. Thomas, is found in God.
To add more fuel to everyone's fire, Jean-Paul Sartre believes in individual freedom, and there is an absolute freedom which no one can hinder your wills. Existentialism is seen to be represented by Sartre's philosophy. The aim of every human being is to be God. The human being constructs the path to his or her chosen destiny. He or she is the architect. Notwithstanding the power of others to influence and coerce our desires, beliefs, and choices, Sartre underlines the necessity of free human choice. Being human, conscious means having the freedom to envision, select, and take responsibility for one's life. Additionally, this means that it's up to you on how you will live your life and give meaning to your life. He believes that existence precedes essence, which means that in order for you to find the meaning of existence, you must exert an effort for you to find out your purpose and importance. You shouldn't rely on someone else to define who you are, because you are free to choose for yourself.
The next one is Thomas Hobbes and his theory of social contract. Thomas Hobbes, a 7th century English philosopher, is today largely considered as one of the only a few truly Greek political philosophers, whose masterworks Leviathan matches the political writings of Plato, Aristotle, Locke, Rousseau, Kant, Rawls in importance. Hobbes is most known for his early and true elaboration of social contract theory, the way of explaining political principles or structures by appealing to the agreement that would be reached among appropriate, early placed, rational, free, and equal individuals. According to Hobbes, the first law of nature is that each person should strive to live each other. The second nature law states that each person should only have as much freedom as he or she is keen to lend to others.
The fifth philosopher is Jean-Jacques Rousseau and his social contract for good government. He believes in good governance. He is one of the most well-known and renowned philosophers of the 18th century French Enlightenment. In his book, The Social Contract, he discusses the concept of a social contract. He expanded on his own human nature idea. Human beings must organize the community or civil community to defend themselves from one another because it is in their nature to wage war against one another. And as humanity's natural tendency is to self-preservation, they must come to free consensual understanding to do so. He also appears to believe in total freedom for two reasons: physically, psychologically, and spiritually freed. Physical freedom implies that a person is not bound by a repressive state apparatus or conquered by his peers. All whilst the person is psychologically and spiritually free when they are not subjugated to any of the synthetic needs that characterize modern society.
The next philosopher is B.F. Skinner, which is known for operant conditioning. Skinner defines operant conditioning as having two components: reinforcement and punishment. Reinforcement is the process of continuously improving a person's behavior because it is a good habit. Reinforcement has two outcomes: positive and negative reinforcement. Giving a reward for a good action or habit is an example of positive reinforcement. When something is removed to improve behavior, this is referred to as negative reinforcement. An example of positive reinforcement is when you gave yourself time to unwind after the stressful week of taking exams and accomplishing tasks. It means that the time you'll unwind is your reward for yourself. An example of negative reinforcement is when you decide to step out of a toxic relationship, improve your behavior and how you see life. Meanwhile, the punishment for limiting behavior in order to develop a good habit has two outcomes, positive and negative punishment. Positive punishment is the addition of rules to ensure that human behavior changes for the better. Negative punishment is when our pleasures and desires are forcibly removed for a period of time in order for us to learn from our mistakes. Yearning for some rules is an example of positive punishment. Adding more house rules may be a motivator for a child who frequently misbehaves to change a behavior. Negative punishment includes things like losing access to a toy, being grounded, and losing reward tokens. In each case, the individual's unfavorable behavior deprives them of something good. The difficulty, according to Skinner, is to free human beings not from control, but from specific kinds of control. And it can only be accomplished if we recognize that we are dependent on the environment around us and merely modify the nature of that dependency. We do not need to destroy or flee from the environment. According to Skinner, it needs to be redesigned. Nobody can or should manage life since it is full of ambiguities. We must learn to accept and live with contradictions and be receptive to life. Living in contradiction is not the same as learning with it.
Last is Ayn Rand. Individual minds, according to Ayn Rand, are the tool for economic advancement, and because the mind is so vital, the sector that shapes it should not be governed by the government. Thinking, according to Rand, is a voluntary act. It is a person's choice whether or not to think. The right to acquire, hold, use, and dispose of material values was mentioned by Rand. The majority of developed countries have disposed of their toxic waste. Nevertheless, emerging countries have not. Filipinos consider themselves to be holistic in nature, based on the notion of harmony. It strives to live in harmony with people and with nature. Filipinos' love is based on the Christian ideal of empathy of others' needs and thankfulness. It included a give and take connection between Filipinos. As a result, repaying people who have aided as an expression of utang na loob or gratitude debt. Loob places a high value on family, relatives, and even strangers, male relatives. It is the common factor among humans, bridging individual variances, although there are disparities between Rand's definition of a free individual and the Filipinos' vision of a free human being. They can be surmounted. The Filipino's potential should be able to develop so that he is conscious of his individuality. Children should be taught about the individuality of their family members, as well as the identity of the country. Human value and dignity should be recognized by self-sufficiency, kasarilan. The names kagandaang loob, kabutihang loob, and kalooban refer to the act of sharing oneself with others. Love connections you to your fellow creatures. According to Rand, individual freedom should be connected with economic freedom, if expressed to include the entire Philippine society. Filipino harmony can be a valuable asset to the full development of Filipinos. In some situations, the Filipino may have a negative impact on the social and financial standing of someone climbing up the social ladder. The wealthier members of a family, for example, share their fortunes with their less fortunate relatives and friends. As a leader or manager, magandang kalooban does not take a passive position in economic development, but rather takes an active role. Leaders should not just consider the impact of ability to do the job, but also treat each individual employee as a person rather than an object. Kasarinlan encourages entrepreneurship to reduce foreign influence over Filipinos. Individualism should have been linked to societal duty rather being a tayo-tayo or kami-kami phenomenon. Our personal uniqueness should be shared with others.
Instead of mimicking foreign cultures, Filipinos should appreciate their own brand of individuality as individuals who are free. Reason and will of volition are part of what makes us human. According to Aristotle and Rand, in this regard, Filipinos had demonstrated mature thought in connection to the EDSA movement. The decision was made on the basis of the Filipinos' conviction in liberty. They also put their life on the line freely because they are in danger. As previously covered in this course, the EDSA revolution is an example of social compact.
Are we free?
Have you now wondered if obsessions, addictions, or certain types of ignorance threaten our freedom?
Do you now believe that freedom is compatible with determinism?
Did you learn about different kinds of freedom?
Are all kinds of freedom equally worthwhile and capturing your attention?
As we are about to end this discussion, may you find the courage to find your own freedom, brave enough to face responsibilities, and eyes wide open to see vulnerabilities as our bridge towards freedom. Remember, freedom is not worth having
If it does not include the freedom to make mistakes.